What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. I hope you all are having a great holiday. In this video, I'm going to talk about a situation that occurred between Simone Biles and her husband, Jonathan Owens, as well as the host of a podcast show called The Pivot Podcast. And a quick sidebar, I said this in my Keke Palmer video, but doesn't it seem like everybody and their mama got a podcast show now? That seems to be the new trend, or, the latest hustle. Just an interesting observation that I've been noticing. But back to the topic. So Simone Biles and Jonathan Owens were on a podcast show called The Pivot Podcast, and they spoke a little bit about their relationship, and it ended up going viral. And honestly, it was more so Jonathan Owens speaking. And Simone Biles was there, but she was kind of more so not in the spotlight, not the focus, because it was more so about Jonathan Owens. But during that conversation, Jonathan Owens says something to the effect of, men are the prize, men are the catch, something like that. And it went viral. And first things first, nothing goes viral coincidentally. Nothing goes viral just because. I'm not sure why this went viral. The conspiracy theorist in me would say maybe it's because it makes Black relationships look a certain way. But the other side of me is also saying, well, it's been a slow news week. I mean, you got to realize it's the holidays, folks spending time with their families and loved ones. So there's not as much foolery to talk about at the moment. Because also, remember, this didn't just go viral within Black social media, which that's what I originally thought that it did. I assumed this would go viral within Black social media, which it did. But it also went viral in mainstream media. There were mainstream media outlets who picked up this story, which I was surprised at too. On one hand, I'm thinking, well, perhaps Simone Biles is a bigger star than I gave her credit for. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a slow news week, for mainstream news too. Or perhaps a combination of the two. Before I really dive into this video, I'm going to give a few disclaimers. And here they go. First, everyone has the right to set the criteria for his or her individual relationships. What works for you may not work for the other person, and vice versa. Next disclaimer, please be aware of people who are yelling and screaming about what they will and will not accept, and what they will and will not tolerate, about how they so big, bad, and bold. We cannot confirm or deny that. And a few examples. Cardi B. In her music, she be talking real bold about what she won't tolerate, but we see in reality that's not the case. Another example. Y'all divine light-skinned deity, Beyonce. I know y'all love Beyonce, but she's another one talking big, bad, and bold in her music, but in reality, not so much big, bad, and bold. Also, one more disclaimer. We're only seeing a piece, a little bit of their relationship, for better or for worse. We're just seeing a snippet of them. So take that into consideration too. So with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get into this. So first and foremost, within the first 2 minutes, there was mention of skin tone. One of the podcast hosts, who is considered to be light-skinned, mentioned the skin tone of Jonathan Owens. But me personally, based on the photos that I've seen of Jonathan Owens, I would consider Jonathan Owens to be peanut butter. That's what some people refer to it. Perhaps some people call it, trigueño, perhaps. But typically peanut butter, kind of like that skin tone where you're kind of like in the middle. You're a nice middle ground. Not quite light, not quite dark, just, in the middle so you can kind of toe the line. But also, Jonathan Owens does have light colored eyes, so I think that may add to it as well in regards to, people associating him with being light skinned. That's just my personal opinion and take on it. But I'll say when I first heard about Simone Biles being married or being engaged to be married or whatever, I always just assumed that the dude was maybe like brown skin or dark skin. And some people could argue, well, peanut butter is a shade of brown, and, perhaps. But, on the darker end of the skin tone spectrum. But does it matter? But does skin tone matter? Shouldn't it be about who we are on the inside, y'all? And all I gotta say is, welcome to the community. Also, one of the dudes has said, like, oh, he don't play football like he light skinned. So needless to say, the mention of skin tone can come off as a bit color struck. And, sometimes people joke or, make jokes based on skin tone. And sometimes things are just supposed to be meant as jokes. Nevertheless, at about 9 minutes in, more or less, one of the podcast hosts whose lighter skin had mentioned something to the effect of, from one pretty red dime to the next, how did you pull Simone Biles? And, some people took some issues with that, the phrasing of that, particularly the pretty red dimes comment or part of it, because I think for many people, especially Black women who are darker skinned, I think that may be somewhat of a trigger, like a trigger phrase, and may perhaps raise red flags in their mind, which I understand. However, I will say, at least based on the phrasing of the question, it does center Simone Biles as being the catch and the prize. Because it's like, hey, how did you pull her? Which I think is important to emphasize, or at least to point out, because the bulk of the criticism about this situation comes from the fact that Jonathan Owens positioned himself as being the catch and the prize. So the podcast host initially approached it from the angle of Simone Biles being the prize, but then in Jonathan's answer, he changed it up, though, because he said, well, it's more like, how did she pull me? Thus positioning himself as the prize or the catch, which, of course, some people on social media did not like. Well, some people took issue with that. And he also goes on to mention that, like, they both swiped right on each other's profile on some particular dating website, and that she messaged him first, and that she was going down his Twitter or Instagram or Twitter timeline with liking a whole bunch of things, and that she drove 45 minutes to see him, and that he didn't really even know who she was, before all this. And he said that he never paid attention to gymnastics. Lies. And shout out to the YouTube user Paris Milan for coming with the receipts on this particular portion, because she had wound up digging up some social media receipts showing Jonathan following and making comments about women's gymnastics. And to be fair, the podcast hosts, they were, kind of calling BS on that as well. But Jonathan was adamant that, hey, he didn't know her before, they started talking with each other on the dating site. And Simone Biles in the interview didn't really deny his story for the most part, other than who swiped right first. And then one of the podcast hosts, his name is Ryan. He is the one who is like, kind of like a brown skin tone, but he's not wearing a hat. He had said something to the effect of Simone Biles is lucky. And, his other podcast hosts, at least one of them, kind of were taken aback by that comment. And I think that Ryan was trying to really stir up some mess as well. Now, Channing, the lighter skinned podcast host, did sort of take issues with that. And maybe the other co-host did too, Fred. But I do definitely remember Channing's reaction to it. And as well, Ryan also was helping push the narrative of Jonathan being the prize, as, him stirring the pot and being like, oh, so, really you were the prize. Oh, you were the catch. And, Jonathan, being slowed and delayed as he is, was like, yeah, man, I always say the man the catch, feel me? Not really knowing or being aware that, hey, this dude is sort of kind of, playing in your face a little bit. Because think about it, that particular part of the interview, that's what went viral. And then Ryan had the nerve to come through with a follow-up video addressing the situation, acting like he ain't instigated. I'm like, really? Stop it. And you have to be careful of people like that. There's a saying, and it's a Haitian saying, and I can't say it in Haitian because I don't speak Haitian Creole, but it translates to, all smiles are not friendly. And in this situation, people smiling and laughing and ha-ha and hee-heeing in your face are simultaneously setting you up and your wife up. But also in the interview, one of them, I forgot who, but one of them said something to the effect of Simone is better in her field than Jonathan is in his field, which I think is true. I think is valid. I don't see Jonathan reaching the equivalent of in his field what Simone has achieved in her field. And that's okay. I mean, if it can work for them, then that's cool. Although, was that necessary? But I think they were saying that to sort of bring or knock Jonathan down a notch or two in order to reposition Simone Biles in this conversation as the prize and the catch. And this was Channing, the lighter skinned guy with the dreads, making these claims that, hey, Simone is more accomplished. She's not the lucky one. Jonathan is the lucky one. How did Jonathan pull her? However, Channing also referred to Simone Biles as this little mofo here, this little mother effer here during the interview, which, I feel like Jonathan should have checked that type of rhetoric being directed towards his wife. So I definitely didn't like that. And also, in regards to Black women's reaction to this, because I feel like there's a split. There's a split because there are some Black women who are saying, well, what's the big deal? And then there are other Black women saying, this is a big deal. And I feel like the Black women who are saying this is a big deal, I think that part of it is because I think that this is a public relationship involving a Black woman, a young Black woman who is darker skinned. And those Black women want to see Simone Biles being doted on and over because they feel like she represents them. That's a part of it, in my opinion. And then there's another argument saying, well, if Simone Biles was in the same situation but with a non-Black man, the same people who are defending it would be criticizing it, which I do believe that that is true. But I personally believe that that particular segment of Black people, they're operating from a place of bias. And there are some people, particularly some Black women, who mention that Jonathan seems to talk about more so what Simone Biles does for him versus her looks when it comes to the reasoning why he's with her, which they are saying that it's a red flag. that he has a quote unquote lukewarm attraction to her, which could be true. However, if he was only commenting about her looks, then I also feel like people would have something to say about that too. So I'm guessing that people may be trying to find, black women in this situation, maybe wanting a middle ground where it's about looks, but it's not completely just about looks. Also, some black women commenting on this situation have said that a man should love a woman more than vice versa, which there could be some truth in that statement. Crazy enough, I've even heard that statement in a Mando pop song, like Mandarin language pop music song. So there may be some truth in that, because perhaps if the man is more interested than the woman, infidelity might not occur as much, since men are more likely to commit infidelity than women. It also positions women as the catch and the prize, which for many women, that works for them. They want to be in a position where they feel like they are the catch, they are the prize. And some people have even said that, women love stronger than men. So in order to help, add balance to the equation or the situation, it would work better with the man loving the woman more, so that there isn't such a big imbalance of who loves who more. One of the podcast hosts, Channing, presented a situation where he was doing something that was considered to be athletic, but not in an athletic environment. For example, he mentioned that he lifted a sofa, on his shoulders, and that his family was impressed by that. So Channing asked Jonathan if Simone ever does quote unquote stupid athletic stuff. Again, with kind of like some weird disrespect embedded in the question, or embedded towards Simone, or things that have to do with Simone Biles for some reason. And then Jonathan had mentioned something about Simone kind of like contorting her body in certain ways, or maybe having her legs lifted really high, and him seemingly perhaps being a bit like taken aback, grossed out, or even perhaps creeped out by it. And Channing saying that maybe Simone Biles is trying to send him a signal, hint hint, nudge nudge. But Jonathan also mentions that him and Simone go to therapy together, and I think possibly individually as well. So perhaps Jonathan is a good shoulder to cry on for Simone, because he had mentioned that Simone was kind of like had went through some things as far as like mental health and things like that. And Jonathan had also mentioned that his stepfather, who helped raise him, was unalived during an armed robbery in his senior year of high school. And also that his mother suffers from a very rare neuromuscular disease, and because of that, she's disabled. And he also mentioned that he likes Simone Biles' cooking. And I'll say that, I'm a little surprised, because I didn't picture Simone Biles being like a cook or a chef, being able to throw down in the kitchen. So that was interesting. And then Channing had said something to the effect of, y'all need to make some babies, about 11 of them. Like, really? Wow, that's a lot of kids. And then Simone Biles mentioned that twins do run in both of their families. And also, Jonathan suffers from sickle cell. And also, Ryan, the podcast host who was being messy and positioning Jonathan as the prize, also, he suffers from sickle cell too. And Channing has said that Jonathan and Simone would have some beautiful babies. And this stuff that I'm mentioning is random stuff, but I thought it was interesting while I was watching the interview, and I thought that I'd share it with you guys. I don't know if it would make a difference or not in terms of how you view the situation between Jonathan and Simone, but nevertheless, I thought I would mention it. Before I end this video, though, I do want to talk about Simone Biles and her reaction and response to the feedback that she received following this interview / conversation. First, I'll say that, I'm going to have some grace for Simone Biles because she is young and was possibly, most likely, raised in a black male worshiping culture, and she's being hyped up by black men and black male identified black women. Simone Biles posted on social media, quote unquote, "Are y'all done yet?" And my response to that is, well, you and your husband and the host of the podcast show, the Pivot Podcast, shared it and people responded. And also, if the result was positive, would you be asking that same question? Like if people were going gaga Google, "Oh my God, relationship goals. Ooh, black love. Ah, y'all make such a great couple. Sha-na-na-na." If that was the reaction, for some reason, I don't believe that Simone Biles would be asking, "Are y'all done yet?" I understand that you do not want to receive negative feedback, negative reactions. Of course, that's just a part of human nature, but this is just a reaction. And she also posted on social media, quote unquote, "Y'all want me to be insecure so bad." Well, do they really want you to be insecure? Or are they just calling it like they see it? And some people brought up the fact that Simone Biles said that she would want Zendaya to play her in a movie. Also on social media, it looked as if Simone Biles was touting her marriage. At least I got a ring. At least I got a man. At least I got a husband. One of those type of women. And you have to be really careful about doing things like that. Because like Rihanna said in her song with Mike Will Made It, "Nothing is promised." Y'all remember that song? Y'all remember the lyrics about how that go? Ain't none of this ish promised. Ain't none of this ish certain. Ain't none of us perfect. I hope it was worth it. But before I go, I'll leave you with this. I think that Simone Biles is the catch, but Jonathan is the prize. And what I mean by that is Jonathan did snag a great catch in Simone Biles. The catch sort of falls in your lap, more or less. The prize, on the other hand, is something that you work for. And it seemed, based on what Jonathan was saying, that Simone Biles kind of put in some work to get with Jonathan. Because he was saying something like, well, he probably wouldn't have reached out if she had not reached out first, for one. Also, some people have said that he has a dating history of dating non-black women, in particular white women. Also, I feel like Simone Biles kind of positioned Jonathan to be the prize. Also, Jonathan had mentioned that him and Simone Biles had went to some sort of a cookie shop or something, and he saw like a lot of people kind of going crazy over Simone. Just in awe of her, stardom and celebrity. And that sort of being a factor in him continuing to be with Simone and ultimately proposing marriage. But as I said in the beginning, we're only seeing a little bit of their relationship, for better or for worse. Also, everyone has the right to set the criteria for his or her own relationships. What works for one person may not work for the next person. What works for you may not work for the next person, vice versa. If this is a relationship dynamic that truly works for the both of them, both Simone and Jonathan, then kudos to them. Because as some people have mentioned, it's sort of weird for people to be more upset about the situation than Simone Biles is, which I do agree on that. And also, I do think that black women, at least a segment of black women are upset because they really do want to see black women in the media who are married or in relationships being positioned as the catch and the prize, which I understand, definitely. But that just may not be a relationship dynamic that they want. And also, you please beware of these people yelling and screaming and hollering and whining about what they will and will not accept, what they will and will not tolerate in a relationship. Now, some people are really about that life, but many others are not. They're just putting on a show for social media or whoever. So don't get caught up in that either. But that's pretty much all that I had to say about this situation, at least for the time being. So please let me know what you think about all of this in the comments section below. And until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.